How often do you think about the Roman Empire? What's up? It's Lit Book Reviews is here to do another one. I'm Tom Holland. With me, as always, is Tom Hollander, and today we are going to discuss the trilogy on the Roman Empire by Tom Holland. So get excited. So yeah, we're going to talk about what I believe to be the best books you can read if you want to learn about the Roman Empire, and they are by an author named Tom Holland, not to be confused with Spider-Man himself. But yeah, Tom Holland's a great historian that's written on a lot of ancient history stuff, and yeah, we're gonna hit these books. How much would you say you didn't read these, but you know your history and stuff? How much do you feel like when you think of the Roman Empire, what do you think about?
I would say that most people who don't know, who like just went to school. I wonder how many people would be able to tell you the differences between Romans and Greeks.
Not a lot of people. Yeah.
Not a lot of people. Because, dude, honestly, I mean, I think of the Colosseum for sure is what I think of first.
And you've been to Rome, correct?
No, I actually have not.
Oh,
I've been to Athens.
No, you've been to Greece. Yeah,
exactly.
Okay.
See, so
I mean,
I've
same
seen
thing,
the Acropolis,
right?
yeah, Temple of Poseidon. I've seen all that nonsense, and it's great. But my parents have been to Rome and they loved it. But no, I mean, I definitely think of Caesar. I'm thinking of young Caesar. I'm thinking
Julius
of our Lord and
himself.
Savior. Just growing up in that Roman Empire.
What a time to be alive.
But yeah, I mean, I guess I think mainly of the Colosseum and like gladiators and stuff. Like I think of the movie Gladiator for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. Young
Which
Joaquin.
is Roman Empire, surely. Yeah. Wait, Joaquin Phoenix is in that?
Dude, what's his name? He's the emperor or whatever. Caesar, whatever he's supposed to be in that
At
movie.
first I was like, I thought that was
is.
I thought because it's
He's the bad
face
guy.
is the gladiator.
Russell Crowe.
That's crazy. How did I not? I guess I mean, wow, that
was like early, I feel like, in his career, like one of his early star roles. But
Dude,
anyway, yeah, great movie.
I just want you to know, man, I can't even fit this. I'm probably gonna have to cut this, but dude, I've been thinking about it a lot lately. What you told me about Gandalf, dude, and it's such a dagger. Like I've thought about. You want to talk about thinking about the Roman Empire? I mean, truly unfortunate to a generation. But anyway,
Dude, I mean, just leave that in there and let people wonder what the tragedy about Gandalf is. I mean, geez.
I will say,
That's tough.
to get us off this topic quickly, what's your Mount Rushmore of empires?
I mean,
Surely
if you
Roman's on
say anything other than the Roman Empire being the one, I mean, you're wrong. Obviously, as far
So
as
is
history
Roman
concerned.
Empire Washington on the?
Yeah,
on
Roman
Rushmore,
Empire is
or-
Washington. Yeah, for sure. After that, dude, I mean, I'm not some empire expert, but maybe the Byzantine Empire. I mean, the French Empire,
surely-
if you will, British Empire. Maybe throw those four up there.
Dude, you're not throwing the Han Dynasty in there? Come on, man. Or
Well, that's what I was thinking. I was like,
Genghis Khan.
like the. I mean, yeah, I don't know
I don't know those kind of
because some things don't qualify as empires, you know. So I don't know.
Oh yeah, I was thinking.
I don't know.
Dynasty, yeah.
I don't know enough.
Yeah, surely those are.
But I feel like the ones I
simultaneous.
threw out were fine. That
Yeah,
works.
I mean, there's got to be a British Empire for sure, especially with imperialism. But anyway,
yeah.
I love it. I love a good Rushmore. We need to do more Rushmores, like of just topics.
Yeah,
Anyway.
we should. We should
Tom
start with the
Holland.
Empire one. And the number one that comes up, as always, with empires is definitely going to be Rome every time. The Roman Empire. So, yeah, these books are great. So Tom Holland, again, great historian. He's actually got a podcast that's really good. It can be pretty dense sometimes because him and his co-host are like so freakishly smart. But he's got other books on other topics that relate to ancient history, but he's definitely known for these. So again, it is a trilogy called The History of Rome. The first one, Rubicon, came out back in 2003. The last one came out last year in 2023. So he's definitely taken his time writing these and written other stuff in between. But yeah, like you said, typically when people think of the Roman Empire, you're thinking of gladiators, the Colosseum, Julius Caesar, his assassination, the Ides of March, these different types of things. But Tom Holland has a way with taking something that's already pretty epic, like the idea of gladiators and an empire conquering the known world and how brutal they were. It's already pretty epic just at face value. But Tom Holland has a way of taking these stories, and just anytime you're reading his books, especially in the more climactic moments that he's discussing, it's like watching a movie directed by Christopher Nolan. It's just so good and so entertaining. So we're just going to kind of go through these books, and I'll just kind of talk about what they cover, which ones are my favorite, what I liked about them, and that kind of thing. But History of Rome by Tom Holland, if you want to learn about the Roman Empire, you enjoy reading. I would say even if you're not really into history, like I could see these books being for a lot of people. So highly recommended. So book number 1 is Rubicon, The Last Years of the Roman Republic. It's very annoying. Dude, it did it right when I was about to talk to it and just did it again.
Right as I'm Rubicon, the last years of the Roman Republic.
So yeah, this guy on Goodreads has got 20,000 ratings with a 4.21 out of 5 stars overall. Came out back in 2003. I gave this a 5-star. I read this back in 2021 maybe, or maybe it was 2020. I absolutely loved this book. This is my favorite of the series. I'll just go ahead and say, if you don't want to get into an entire series, you can just read this one and get a lot out of it. And this one mostly covers like Julius Caesar in the beginning and then Augustus. So it starts out with the two most well-known, probably, Caesars, the one who started it all. So I'll read the little thing here on Goodreads. In 49 BC, the 705th year since the founding of Rome, Julius Caesar crossed a small border river called the Rubicon and plunged Rome into cataclysmic civil war. Tom Holland's enthralling account tells the story of Caesar's generation, witness to the twilight of the Republic and its bloody transformation into an empire. From Cicero, Spartacus, and Brutus to Cleopatra, Virgil, and Augustus, here are some of the most legendary figures in history brought thrillingly to life. Combining verve and freshness with scrupulous scholarship, Rubicon is not only an engrossing history of this pivotal era, but a uniquely resonant portrait of a great civilization in all its extremes of self-sacrifice and rivalry, decadence and catastrophe, intrigue, war, and world-shaking ambition. And I really don't know if I could say it better than myself.
There's some great words in that.
I mean, just tongue twisted me up. I don't even know how to speak anymore after that. And that's what a lot of his book is like, honestly. That's what makes these books so great is his writing. He's just so smart and has mastered the English language and writing it so well that there's not a word that doesn't belong in this book. It's just crafted so well. But yeah, essentially... Yeah. Oh yeah, dude, he's an historian all day. But yeah, that it's called Rubicon. That's the river that Julius Caesar crosses when he's going into Rome to take over Rome as its dictator, essentially, and to become the first Caesar. And it's pretty much the fall of Rome as a republic. Rome still has a lot of time as an empire in history, and there's a lot of Caesars that are discussed throughout this trilogy. But this is really when it turns into the Rome that we remember. Things like Hannibal, like the Punic Wars that we were just talking about before we started, happened, 150 years, somewhere in there before this takes place. So Rome's been around for a while. But this is when the Republic falls and it becomes the empire of Caesars that we know it as today. So, yeah, Julius Caesar crosses, just the beginning of this book when he's crossing the Rubicon, it's like chilling the way that Tom Holland writes it. So this is where it all starts again. You're mostly focusing on Julius Caesar. And then obviously, if you don't know this, it's, no secret. Julius Caesar gets assassinated and then Augustus comes into play. And Augustus is essentially remembered as a god after his time. There's all the Caesars after him are trying to emulate him. Like Julius Caesar is the guy we remember as doing the thing, but Augustus, especially for the Roman people, was the guy. They worshipped him they treated him as a deity, and there's a lot of nuance to that. Like, if people, some people obviously didn't actually think he was a god, but just the way he's revered and what we know from the history we have, it's just fascinating. These people are brutal. That's something we obviously know from the gladiators, the Colosseum, and all this stuff, but there is so much more to it. In most of human history, it's been like this, but the level of absolute domination that Rome put on display in its empire years, Julius Caesar himself was just coming back after pacifying Gaul for, years and years, just absolutely annihilating these people. And then he comes to take Rome, obviously, at the beginning of the book. But yeah, it just really shows you who the Roman people are at this time. It explains why, at this pivotal moment in Rome's history, Julius Caesar is able to come in and do what he does. Not forever, obviously, because he ends up getting assassinated. But it just gets you started on this is a foundational start to understanding Rome as we know it. And it was epic, man. I mean, I've been telling you about this one for a while. This is, I think, in my top
Jeb
5,
read, right?
Definitely in my top 10. Yeah, I got Jeb to read it as well. He loved it. But yeah, it's in my top 10 of all time. Yeah, yeah. He takes his time, but I do think he did. We talked about it a bit, but yeah, highly recommend, dude. I mean, when are you gonna step up and read it, bro? I mean, I've been telling you for a while now. What's the deal?
Dude. I'll read it when you read. Like, you know, we got plenty that we got to swap and read.
Yeah,
you know,
we do.
We're just both on different sides. Sadly, we still have jobs.
Yeah, dude.
One day.
What a dagger. What an
one day. I wish I cared more about this one. Probably, if we're talking ancient history, this one will for sure be. Like, if I'm reaching for an ancient history book, this one. Like, I honestly don't know any other that I would even think about reading. Whereas just from hearing you talk about Tom Holland, like, I already, even though I haven't read him, I already respect him just from like how you've talked about him. So, trust that I would actually enjoy it. But I mean, we've had this discussion before. It's just with ancient history, so much of it is so like hearsay. So
there's a lot of conjecture and things like that.
Yeah. So I don't. It's never been like the. I mean, it's deep down the list of histories that interest me. So
yeah,
like,
and
that's why it's so funny when people talk about that. Like, how often do you think of the Roman Empire? Like, I mean, every now and then for me. But dude, if we talk about like World War II, I mean, that's literally. I think about that like 12 times a day.
If the question was how often do you think about JFK, it's like, oh, I mean, you want to know how many times an hour or a day, or what are we talking about here?
I mean, I genuinely was this is an absolute nuanced like pivot, but dude, I was literally driving to work today just listening to, James Madison, and I'm like, dude, surely someone's written about this, but I mean, someone needs to write an in-depth, and maybe not even in-depth, like a quick blurb about why the founding of America was so important, and then do like a global context of, all right, like, where is everybody else at in the world at this time, in the 1780s, when America's, when the founding fathers are doing what they're doing, just to put it into a little bit more perspective of like, all right, what's going on in France, what's going on in Great Britain, what's going on in Germany, what's going on in Russia,
how's Russia
what's going on in China right now. Like, just put a little context when people want to get heated and remove Thomas Jefferson. From places in New York, it's like, okay, just to put some context. But anyway, that's just, I mean, me just sitting in my car just thinking about, man.
Yeah,
we got some goats. We got some goats as founding fathers. So I mean, that's a totally different topic from the Rubicon. But like, this does get me.
But that's an important thing.
Want to read ancient history.
Yeah, and that's what makes history so fun is, I say this all the time about history books. It's the same with these books. It's the same with, like you said, reading about the founding fathers. With any era of history, World War II, you read one thing, and as you're reading, you're compiling a list in the back of your head of other things you got to read about. Oh, I need to read about that guy. Like when we read Napoleon, like I've already bought one book. I'll probably buy another one. When we were reading Napoleon, I was like, bro, I want to learn more about Alexander the First. I don't know, like, I just want to know more about this guy just from this book. And it's the same here with Rubicon and reading about the Roman Empire. It calls back to Alexander the Great, so you want to read about him. There's a lot of Greek history mixed in there, so you want to read more about that. So yeah, that's one thing I love about history.
For so many like leaders from the colonial, like even founding fathers, they're gonna. I mean, reading something like this, I'm sure would give me a better understanding, just because those guys looked to leaders during, the Roman Empire. I mean, more recently probably to like Alexander the Great's, but I mean these type of guys like Julius Caesar are brought up with like how they ran governments. I mean, they're not like saying let's hit a repeat, but the idea of a republic, is new at this time. So
right, yeah. So It's fascinating stuff, and I would agree. Like, this actually was probably the first real exposure I got to really diving into ancient history, if I remember correctly. And it's still not one of the top historical eras. Ancient history isn't something that I want to read a ton about. But when I do, it's usually been pretty fun. But because of the conjecture, because a lot of the eras in like a time like the Roman Empire, there's like one historian that most of our information comes from. So you have to take in the biases of this guy because, he was boys with this consul, but he hated this one. So obviously, so there's always stuff like that. And there's always other historians, but, they find it's so old, they find some archaeological text or whatever, and it's just from one guy. And that's just all the information we have about like an entire war or something like that. So you definitely have to take things, but I think Tom Holland, someone who's spent 20 years writing this series, it's a guy that I trust to give me as close to the truth as we can get. So I pretty much take what he says as gospel at this point, to be honest. That's the first one, Rubicon. Great book. I'd recommend it to pretty much anyone, especially if you have any interest in having an idea of who Julius Caesar was, who Augustus was, what it was like, and before we get further to the other two books, and maybe I should have said this at the start, the thing that's cool about the Roman Empire, and maybe not cool, it's actually mostly not cool, is the parallels, the historical parallels to our time today. Some of them are terrifying, and we'll get into some of them a little more with the other books. Not so much in this book specifically, but especially some stuff later during the Empire's years. But just so many factors. You see this very easily in a book about World War II or even one that harks back further. But when you're looking at ancient history, it's fascinating to have moments where you realize, wow, we are just a decadent people. And if we are given too much, we will take too much. There's just so much inferred that you can get from these times. I mean, these people were the people who lived in Rome, who were citizens of Rome, lived lives that I don't know. I mean, obviously it's way back when they didn't have AC, but especially for the time, and even in some ways in comparison to our time, they lived such luxurious lives and just did not know strife, and it became a major problem for them. And this is the citizens who stayed in Rome. Now, don't get me wrong, you have Roman soldiers who are out doing the absolute work of God, just killing everybody they see and living in the cold and never eating food. Like, don't get me wrong, there were some savages, there were brutal people, but the citizens of the city of Rome that just lived normal lives, I mean, they were living some kind of life. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of
ancient rock stars.
I mean, they were something, bro. So, yeah, Rubicon, I highly recommend it. I think there's a lot of things we can learn from an era like the Roman empires. Mostly things that should be a warning, but a lot to learn nonetheless. So that's the first one, Rubicon. That's book one in the history of Rome by Tom Holland. We're moving on to the second book, which is Dynasty, The Rise and Fall of the House of Caesar. This one's got way less ratings. It came out back in 2015. It's got barely under 5,000 ratings with a 4.14 overall out of 5 stars. Again, I gave it a 5. And I'll give you a quick idea of what this one covers. So Dynasty continues Rubicon's story, opening where that book ended, with the murder of Julius Caesar. This is the period of the first and perhaps greatest Roman emperors, and it's a colorful story of rule and ruination, running from the rise of Augustus through to the death of Nero. Holland's expansive history also has distinct shades of one Claudius, with 5 wonderfully vivid and in 3 cases thoroughly depraved emperors, Augustus, Tiberius, Caligula, Claudius, and Nero, featured, along with numerous fascinating secondary characters: intrigue, murder, naked ambition, and treachery, greed, gluttony, lust, incest, pageantry, decadence. The tale of these 5 Caesars continues to cast a mesmerizing spell across the millennia. So yeah, that's essentially it. I guess there's less about Augustus and Rubicon than I remember. I feel like they discuss him a good bit, but either way, Julius Caesar is dead. This covers really the most famous and like well-remembered, not well-remembered in a good way, but just we know the most about him and talk about him the most, or the 5 Caesars that followed Julius. And so like I was kind of saying a minute ago, Augustus is the OG, really. Because, they end up killing Julius, so they're like, well, We killed him for a reason. So, but Augustus, they loved him through and through. And this guy was just absolutely insane. I mean, these Caesars, bro, this book, this is the wildest of the 3 books. If you want to just dive in and just hear the craziest stories that will scare you, even from thousands of years away, it will scare you. Just dive into this one. Dive into Dynasty and read about these Caesars. They were absolute maniacs. They were geniuses in some ways, and they were some of the most powerful people that have ever, lived in this world with the power that was given them as being Caesars. But the things they did, man, you think like, bro, I'm a human too? Like, we do this? It's bad, bro. It's bad. Like, it's terrifying. I'll just, to give you one example.
They were living too long. They were living long enough.
They lived long enough to become the villain, bro. I mean, it was tough, and they didn't even live that long, bro. They were
didn't live that long,
32, and they were out.
He's like, yo, I'm about 25, about time.
Yeah, it's about time
my
for me to
villain
retire. Yeah. So one example of this, and again, this is a scary parallel to nowadays, and I don't know if this video is going to get like canned, and you're only going to be able to find it on 4chan or something. Yeah. But it's Caligula, if I remember correctly, is the Caesar that they talk about this the most with. But I know Tiberius as well. Nero for sure, because Nero might have been the worst of them all. But Caligula especially, they had literally their own Epstein's Island. They had an island off the coast, a little island where they had this complex set up where the Caesar and all his buddies would go out and take a bunch of little kids and slaves and have their own Epstein's Island. And that's all I'll say. And when you're reading about it and you're reading about the things we know and the things that were said, and like you realize how depraved these people were that were running the world, it's terrifying, man. And when you see the parallel of it being this kind of well-kept secret, but kind of everybody knows about it thing that they're just all turning, they're not looking at, what is it you say? Turning the cold shoulder, or not looking. Whatever it is, dude, letting it happen with no consequence, dude, it's terrifying to read about. It's scary. Dude. Like, these dudes are sending people off to war while they're doing this, and it's just rough, man. It's a rough time.
Yeah, I saw that article where apparently Aristotle got caught going out there or something. Dude, I feel like that would be the what's his name? That'd be the Stephen Hawkins of our generation if that happened. Just kidding, dude. I don't want to slander our boy Aristotle.
Dude, I hate you. I hate you so much, bro. Like, bro, did I see Marcus Aurelius out there on the island?
Or maybe it was, maybe Aristotle was Greek, actually.
Yeah, that he was Greek.
Dude, that's all me too.
That was your Philadelphia Massacre moment.
that was Philadelphia.
Idiot. So yeah, I would. It's hard to say because I think Rubicon's the best book, but this one is wild, man. And it's not all just terrible stuff that's going to make you feel sick to your stomach. Some of it is just wild. It's just like, man, they really had the audacity to do that, man. I mean, these dudes were. I mean, just the scale of some of the things they would do and the amount of slaves and people that they would be fine with dying just so they could build a massive statue was just crazy, dude. Or they would just they're like, bro, send 50,000 people like 6 months that way and kill everybody, dude. Just kill everybody until they know that we're in charge. Just go out there and kill them until they surrender. Take all their stuff. Take everything they have and bring it back here. And then they would parade it through the streets, bro. All the personal belongings of an entire nation, bro. They're just parading through the streets. And the Roman people are in the stands hammered like, bro, look at all that stuff, bro. They're going to build something new with all that stuff. And it's just like, what is going on? So many people died, bro. They called everybody barbarians, bro. Everybody that wasn't in the Roman Empire, they're like, bro, they're barbarians, bro. We need to kill them. We need to bring them up.
We need to take their lives.
It's just wild,
dude.
Bro.
Those Roman
wild
roads,
to read
you know
about.
what I mean?
Those
good old Roman roads, though, dude.
I mean, thank God for the aqueducts and the roads.
Yeah. What would we do without them? Golly.
And it's crazy. The simple stuff like that is what led to their immense power. Was them having resources that just allowed them to thrive beyond measure, while people were still out here with like wooden sticks trying to kill tigers and stuff. It's just It's just crazy, man. It's a crazy time.
Hmm.
So yeah, that discusses those 5 Caesars. Read it, pick your favorite. I think that one's definitely crazy. So that's the second one. On to the third, final book of the history of Rome, Pax, War and Peace in Rome's Golden Age. This came out in September of last year, 2023. It's only got like 1,100 ratings, 4.24. I gave it a 5. What's new? So this one, Pax, is the third in a trilogy of books narrating the history of the Roman Empire. The series that began with Rubicon and continued with Dynasty now arrives at the period which marks the apogee of the Pax Romana. It provides a portrait of the ancient world's ultimate superpower at war and at peace, from the gilded capital to the barbarous realms beyond the frontier, from emperors to slaves. The narrative features many of the most celebrated episodes in Roman history: the destruction of Jerusalem and Pompeii, the building of the Colosseum and Hadrian's Wall, the conquests of Trajan, and the spread of Christianity. Pax gives a portrait of Rome, the great white shark of the ancient world, the Siberian tiger at the very pinnacle of her greatness. So yeah, that's book 3. I just read this one in the last couple weeks and decided, instead of just reviewing this one, that we talk about all of them, since we haven't talked about any of them on the channel really. This one was also really good. It's equally wild. The wildness doesn't stop. This one actually continues with Nero for a good bit of the book. So you're still getting him, and then you get a succession of, I think, what is it, 6? Like 8 more in a very short time period. There's one point where 4 emperors like take power within a year, back to back to back to back. It's a wild time. It's almost a misnomer, not a misnomer. It's like it's almost satire that this is considered their age of peace, because they're still constantly at war. They're still constantly killing people all over the place. Like, you know, there will be a group of people that's like, yo, we want to keep more of our food. And they're just like, bro, go kill all of them. Leave just the youngest alive. Leave the youngest in every family alive so that they won't forget who we are. They'll just go ape out of nowhere, bro. It's crazy. So yeah, this one's really good, and it kind of closes it off. Probably for me, even with, you know, recency bias, it's probably not my favorite of all of them, but I still loved it. I still gave it a 5. It's up against really stiff competition. And I think the characters are a little less enthralling as far as the figures, because we just have a lot less information on all of them. Some of them we don't have much at all. So, but it's fascinating, because you're just getting this wild story of these power grabs. I mean, after Julius Caesar comes in, years before the point you're in in this book, he just sets a precedent of people just violently taking power. I mean, of the 12 Caesars, the 12 Caesars that are remembered, all the way from Julius Caesar to Hadrian, I think is the last one, 12 or 14, whatever it is. I mean, just the amount of, I think only 4 of them died of natural causes. It may have only been 2 or 3. The rest of them got absolutely murked, bro. Every one of them. And it's just wild. It's like and a lot of them get deified after their death. So they'll kill him and then be like, but he was a god.
That guy was the best.
Let's remember him well. We love that guy. After they murdered him, and when they murdered him, they were like, yes, he needed to die. And then the new emperor comes in, and the emperor's like, man, we love that guy. We're like, yeah, let's build a statue. And it's just like, what is going on, bro? Like, are y'all okay? They really were.
None of
it
it was
problems
through heredity either. Like, it wasn't obviously getting passed down. This wasn't someone's son killing a dad. It was just on to the next.
Yeah, most of the time it was not hereditary. There were sometimes some like genetic relations, like whether it was like an uncle nephew type situation, but most of the time it was just absolute brothers in Christ, bro. I mean, they hated Christ, but yeah, for sure. Oh shoot, what was I saying? Can you see me right now?
Oh, I can see you, dude. Don't worry. No, I'm looking right in your God-fearing eyes. I don't know. My brother in Christ really, I think,
you really threw me off with that one,
ended your journey.
Really snapped me out of it with that one. But yeah, it's fascinating. and that's where it ends. I don't know if there's much else to say. I highly recommend this series. Are you going to read them, Andrew? After this?
I definitely will
all
read
three
these.
of them in a row.
Dude, the only thing about
Probably
ancient
not.
history, again, which I know there are like applications in small ways to real life, but I don't know. It happened so long ago. That's why it's crazy. Like, cause dude, something wild could have happened like over the course of 3 years, but because like it didn't last like that long, we don't really know about it. Or if we do, it's like a half of a chapter. Whereas freaking Augustus is probably the most important because he probably lasted the longest. Maybe he didn't. I don't know. You read these books. I don't know. But it's like you last for 20 years back then. It's like, oh, dude, this guy's eternal.
He's God.
I mean, 20
guy's
years.
God.
You
He's
last
gotta be.
if you just last a single generation, which I believe is roughly 20 years. I mean,
Yeah.
because no one else can last that. I mean, just because life in general is not
I mean,
that
first
long.
of all,
but
if you just live that long, if you're like 20 years old, they're like, bro, I mean, you made it. You good, bro. You can die now, happy man. Because some of these dudes, I mean, Augustus was young, bro. He was young. He was like, I might be tripping, but if I remember correctly, this dude was like 18 when he started coming out of power. I mean, this dude's a kid, and he's just like, bro, I'm master of the world. Go kill people. Like, left
dude,
and right,
that's the
bro.
thing, man. Back then, I mean, even now, I guess it still exists, but I mean, talk about literally just no value of life. I mean, just sending people just to be slaughtered, or
Zero,
just,
bro.
I mean, the caste system and just hierarchy of life. I mean, you're talking about really just seeing people as nothing, literally like you are nothing.
So
And that's wild.
absolutely nothing. And I'll end with this story right here. We may or may not leave it in the podcast, but to tell you
is
how
this about
much
the
these
wife?
people, dude, to tell you how much these people did not care about others. So Nero, who is often regarded as the most insane of them all, either him or Caligula, I feel like are the ones that are remembered as the craziest.
Is he the one
So
who
Nero
lit people
has
on
a
fire,
wife.
Christians? Like use them as lanterns?
Yeah,
I
I'm
mean,
pretty sure. I mean, he was a
argue
vile
those are-
person. He was crazy.
That man's got no
So-
crowns.
Dude, I mean, the whole thing is gone.
No crowns.
It's gone. Nero has a wife. Her name's Poppaea. She dies. All right. He's real upset about it. He loved his wife so much, never cheated on her once. So she dies, and he's like, you know what? I want her back. So he sends out his people to find a doppelganger. He says, I want you to find somebody who looks just like her so that I can make her my wife and so that I can tell people that I have risen my wife from the dead. So they go out and find a person that looks so much like Poppaea. And the way Tom Holland presents this point in the story is just so devastating. He essentially is telling you how this person's been found and brought back to Rome and made to be Nero's wife. And then he's like, I'm paraphrasing, but he's basically like, unfortunately for this guy, he had to have his genitals removed in order to become Nero's wife. The person that they found was a dude who, against his will, they removed his genitals to make him a woman, to be Nero's wife. And dude, if that ain't a scary parallel, I don't know what is.
Dude, imagine surviving.
I might be
getting-
exaggerating, but I mean, it's weird, man. Yeah, I mean,
Dude, I
imagine
would
being that
just
dude.
not
What
wanna
sucks
survive
is, I mean, no, dude. And it talks about how like they gave him like a coach to teach him how to be a woman after they removed his genitals and made him a woman. And
You said he was
yeah,
a
it's
boy
just
too,
terrifying.
right? This was not like a
oh yeah, he
grown
was a
man.
kid. Like that.
Yeah.
Tom Holland says that it like essentially, again, I'm paraphrasing it. It's safe to assume the kid was like 12 or 13 when they found him. I mean,
So, I mean,
and not only that, but after Nero dies, all the other Caesars to like look like they're the Caesar now want the new Poppaea as their wife. So I mean, this happens to him repeatedly until finally he takes his own life, which is tragic. I mean, all I
that's the
know
only
is,
option. That is the only option in this scenario.
dude, that
It's
kid
a
better
real
be in heaven
shame.
flowing in milk and honey for what he had to experience. I mean, I cannot imagine, bro.
It's a
I cannot
shame, dude,
imagine.
that garages did not exist back then either. So it was not an easy death either, bro.
This
You
guy
couldn't
did
just
not have a Glizok
shoot a
laying
gun.
around.
No, there was no carbon monoxide even remotely in the universe at this point. So
God,
They were only painful deaths.
None to breathe in.
Because, I mean, what?
Dude,
He slit his throat? Like, what do you do?
And I don't even know. I think so. Probably stabbed himself or slit his own throat. That's what a lot of them did. I mean, you imagine stabbing yourself to death?
Well, I can imagine trying to slit my own throat and just forever maiming myself. Just you can't even do that right. You just
walking out into the kitchen like, dude, take me to the hospital. I fuck up. Oh God, that's bad. That's messed up. But yeah, dude. I mean, so if that doesn't tell you, that doesn't tell you how depraved these people were, I don't know what will.
We didn't tell him why he almost killed himself. Dude, this is the best part of the story. And by best, I mean absolute worst. That whole myth about the rape of Pompeii.
Oh, my God, dude. Yeah, so, wow, I'm so glad you reminded me. The reason he killed himself. Oh, dude. I mean, I don't know if this can go on.
Amongst many other things.
But it's real history, as far as we know. Yeah, so the recent, and I can't remember which one it was. Maybe it was Galba or Otho, one of the Caesars that came into power. And it was after young Poppaea had been passed around a few times. This Caesar comes into power, and because of some geopolitical things that were going on,
not the geopolitics.
There was this whole idea of the R word of this place. I'm trying to not be completely demonetized.
Not the R word.
Batman wears a cape, but this is the R word. That sounds like that, if you get what I'm saying. So the that of a place occurs. And this Caesar thinks it would be a neat parallel to show that now that he's in power, things are like going to get better. And his neat parallel, the way he wants to emulate this to the people of Rome, is by having Poppaea caped in front of everybody by a bunch of men. And so young Poppaea decides to kill him herself. Obviously. Because he doesn't want to go through that. She doesn't want to go through that.
What a metaphor, dude.
I mean, it's just...
Dude,
I don't know what the metaphor is, and I don't know. I don't want to know. It's dark, man. So maybe you don't want to read these books. It's tough.
Yeah, that's the viewer. What the viewer should learn right now is if you think your life's bad, just imagine waking up one day and realizing you just accidentally look a little too much like the previous emperor's wife who just died. That's the only thing you've ever done in your life. Is just accidentally looking a little too much like some random princess.
It could always be worse.
Queen.
It could always be worse. And that's the takeaway from the Roman trilogy, is it could always be worse. So, yeah, these books are crazy. Dude, I don't know how much of this is going to be able to stay in. I don't know if
all of it.
This might be the last time you see this.
Dude.
But highly recommend The History of Rome by Tom Holland. It's very good, and I think that's about it. We'll see you on the next one.
See you in the Coliseum, boys.
Huzzah!